seconds. Mic is hot. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good morning. I'm Marcia Latta, and we welcome you from the beautiful campus of University of Findlay for our Fridays at Findlay program. I know it's going to be a very interesting topic. We're going to be discussing agribusiness today with two terrific leaders in the field. And of course, this is Ohio's largest industry. I do want to share with you a little bit here at University of Findlay. We have a few programs that tie directly into this. Of course, we have many students who take biology, study botany, and for those who go into something crop-related, that's most helpful. We also have an outstanding and very large animal science and pre-vet program. In any given year, we have about 650 students studying in that field. And I'm happy to share with you that graduates from our animal science pre-vet program have a veterinarian school acceptance rate of more than 5 times the national average. Just in 2019, 85% of the graduates of that program were accepted into veterinarian schools across the nation. And that is just outstanding and says a great deal about our faculty, staff, and students. As we continue through the fall semester, we have a number of other virtual programs coming up, and we hope that you'll join with us on many of those. On November 11th at 4 p.m., we will be live streaming a special Veterans Day recognition program. We have our Mazza Artist Monthly series and a weekend conference coming up, and a number of other alumni virtual programs. You can find more information about all of those on our website, on the university's website. I also want to mention that December 4th is our next Fridays at Findlay program. It will be with Kirk Vashaw, President and CEO of Spangler Candy Company, a fourth-generation firm. And the title will be Spangler Candy Company, 4 generations of making dum-dums and candy canes for the world to enjoy. And information and registration on that will be coming up very soon. I want to say a special thank you to Premier Bank for being our sponsor of this terrific program. At this time, I'll introduce Sam Bartley. Sam is a senior, and she is going to give a few reflections before we hear from President Fell to introduce our panel today. Sam's a senior from Valencia, Pennsylvania. She's currently the student assistant for the animal science faculty and is very involved in Delta Tau Alpha National Agricultural Honor Society and is also very involved with our campus ministry. She leads a women's group Bible study. So welcome, Sam. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm honored to reflect on my time here at the University of Findlay with you here this morning. It is extremely hard to imagine that in a mere few months, I will be graduating from the University of Findlay, a place that has been my home away from home for nearly 3.5 years, a place where I have matured and grown from a pre-veterinary student to a veterinary school applicant. In addition to the research that I have had an honor to be a part of here at UF, I have been extremely blessed to be a primary raiser and university trainer for a service dog in training through the nonprofit 4 Paws for Ability, as well as the student faculty assistant for the Animal Science House. Additionally, I have served as a Bible study leader for co-leader for Girls Group, as well as a spiritual retreat leader and a Bible study leader for campus ministries for 3 years. As this academic year's OC3 secretary and treasurer, I have been involved with outreach events discussing Title IX consent, education, and breaking society's harmful stereotypes. I would not have been as successful here at the University of Findlay if not for my generous scholarship donors. To Mr. and Mrs. Jack Ridge and to the TLB Christian Leadership Scholarship, I thank you for your monetary contributions to my academic career. Because of your scholarship gift, I have found strong Christian fellowship and has had more freedom in discovering academic opportunities. I believe Findlay has far exceeded my expectations for me as preparing me as a student for a meaningful life and productive career outside of the University of Findlay. As a student and a senior animal science student, I would like to personally thank the University of Findlay community for their support and impact on my life. Specifically to Campus Ministries, thank you for developing my leadership skills that have helped me prioritize community service and fellowship. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Students like Sam are why we're here. It is my privilege now to introduce our special guests who will serve as your panelists this morning. I know these three gentlemen, and they are phenomenal in their leadership, in their values-driven work, and in their knowledge of the field of agribusiness. Ken Vaupel is the CEO and a key stakeholder in Alfagreen Supreme, a privately held firm headquartered in Toledo. Alfagreen Supreme is a leading provider of direct dehydrated alfalfa products with multiple manufacturing, storage, and distribution facilities throughout the United States. The company directly supplies the specialty animal, equine, and pet food industry. Ken is a big supporter of UF athletics and the Findlay community. Paul Comback, Jr. Paul Comback, Jr. is the president of Comback Feeds, a third-generation family agribusiness dedicated to producing top quality animal nutrition products, pork and eggs that help feed the world. Comback Feeds serves thousands of family farms, as well as some of the largest food brands and most advanced animal genetics companies in the United States. Paul earned his Bachelor of Science in Accounting from Bob Jones University before earning his MBA from Harvard University. Rob Coleman is one of our newest additions to the University of Findlay faculty, serving as Assistant Professor of Business. We're very pleased to have him join us. He is currently a PhD candidate in management with his doctorate to be awarded in December. One of his research interests is global food access, which is also the topic of a paper he will submit for peer review this fall. Rob and his family are enjoying exploring Findlay and all it has to offer. Welcome, Ken, Paul Jr., and Rob.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Fell. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here. Really appreciate it. And let's just jump right in. And I want to ask you to describe one or two of the biggest challenges you see facing agriculture today.
Paul, you want me to go first?
Ken.
Super, thank you. Well, as we all know, every day when you're in this world of agriculture, it starts with the word weather. Whether or not, weather what it is. But weather always drives our industry and always has and always will. From grains to feed to the livestock industry, it's a big part of us. Today we're also dealing with global pandemic. It's a big change in what we're seeing. But probably one of the biggest challenges I see today is how does agribusiness, agriculture attract talent? Talent's a big challenge.
Yeah, I would agree with Ken on that. I think that when I look at the broad picture of agriculture and how that impacts our business, I would say that the biggest challenge is attracting good people, the right people. We need leaders, we need innovators, we need people, when you talk about sustainability, when you talk about increased food production needs for the global population increase, it's going to be about attracting good people that are able to innovate. And I think the second challenge would be the regulatory side. Our industry absolutely needs the opportunity to innovate, to adapt and change. And as you look at the global and the U.S. challenges, it's going to be about how do we deal with government, how do we impact regulation.
Okay, great, thank you. And that kind of moves us into this next one. That one was about challenges, this one's about change. Ag business is an umbrella term that takes into account numerous products and businesses. In your view, what's the biggest change that you see happening in that sphere?
Well, I would start with transparency, traceability. Paul's alluding exactly to what the keys are. We've got a responsibility to our environment. We've got a responsibility to the land, to the water, and a responsibility to the consumer. We have to be fully transparent, be able to say what you do what you say, and document. Paul mentions regulatory. People can fear regulatory, or they can adapt to regulatory. And in our opinion, if you're going to be a part of the future of agribusiness, you've got to adapt and adopt. Don't be afraid of regulatory. Go and immerse yourself in it, get to know it, and try to help adapt your team to understand the responsibility to say what you do and do what you say.
You know, one of the things that we've learned is as technology has changed, the ability of every industry to change has accelerated. And so the rate of change maybe 50 years ago was much slower. But when I look at how fast our industry, the technology is changing now, it seems like every 5 years you're having to reinvent yourself, while maintaining the core. And so I think that one of the things that's changing is how fast it's changing. And it's very interesting to see both consumer demands and what a consumer is looking for from our industry is changing rapidly, whether it's organic, whether it's the types of food that they're eating, how they want those foods delivered. That the entire technology about the last mile freight, the direct-to-consumer model that's changing how food is consumed. Obviously, the pandemic right now is changing. So if you look at food service, the consumption of proteins, whether it's in restaurants or hotels, now it's, grocery sales are up while food service is down. So it's changing the model that we even deliver food to the end consumer. The population is changing, and so there's a lot of shifts going on as the world continues to adapt and change that we have to figure out how to take advantage of or get left behind.
Yeah, I think, kind of following along Paul's comments, with the pandemic, the COVID-19, we had to create what we call non-contact. We had to go about a different means of how we handle documentation, or even, as you stated, to deliverable what we want to do, from curbside or to overnight or by, intermodal or whatever it might be.
Well, a lot of people may not understand too, as you look at that situation, is as essential businesses, if we don't do what we do every day, chicken doesn't show up on the grocery shelf within 7 days. And so, it's a pretty short supply window to making sure, food security and things like that. So we have to continue to adapt and make sure that we're going to be able to continue to provide food.
Yeah, well, and kind of along that same line, you got to sit there and think our team,
Yeah.
We talked about essentiality. I mean, every business in ag was deemed essential in order to put the meat and potatoes and the food in front of the animal or the human. But our team members, for them coming in, day out, understanding that commitment and being responsible to follow the COVID requirements. So
I think that speaks directly back to attracting talent at this point too, right?
It's another one challenge.
A continuous search for talent.
Absolutely.
Okay. I want to switch to one just for Ken. So, Ken, you've been a leader in this industry for many years. When you reflect on your career, what's been the most meaningful to you?
you say many. I thought I was just getting into it. No, ironically, no, it's hard to believe. When you don't go to work, what you do is you go to have fun. You go to explore and enjoy learning every day. But I would have to say the relationships within our industry is enabled me to one, learn, because you're fellow mentors. You know, Paul and I have known each other outside of here today. We know each other socially, we know each other professionally. But you just enjoy being around talent. You enjoy learning and being a part of an industry that's changing. But I would say that probably the other thing beyond the relationships that I value the most is the things that you get to do and learn to enact or employ your knowledge into action. You know, it's creating opportunities. It's really opportunities.
Okay, great, thank you. And then switch back to both of you. This will be for both of you. It has to do with sustainability. How is sustainability in agriculture changing, and how are things like, say, greenhouses and other alternative growing methods playing a role?
I think that one of the big things, well, first of all, when you talk about sustainability, I think it's important that we are in the industry that is the oldest industry in human civilization. So this has been going on for thousands and thousands of years, feeding people. So, you know, as farmers, you know, at our core, sustainability is incredibly important to us because we have a millennial view of our industry. And so, you know, we want to make sure that we pass the land down. You know, Ken, your son's in the business, you know, I'm third generation. You know, we want our businesses to continue, and if we're going to do that, we have to be very keyed into how we're using resources, how we're improving the use of resources. And as you know, as we look at being able to produce more and more food that's going to be needed, we have to be more efficient with those resources while we're taking care of our environment. So I think that as an industry, it's something that we focus on every day and how we're going to do it better, how we're going to be more efficient, how we're going to produce well, while being responsible for the resources that God has blessed us with. So I think that's important. As I look at how sustainability is changing, I think that one thing that people are really focused in on is the farm to table aspect. Ken mentioned the transparency earlier. That transparency of where does my food come from? I mean, you see it in the grocery store tracking, chicken or pork or beef all the way back to the farm where it was produced. You look at traceability, you look at how blockchain is going to be impacting sustainability, especially on the produce side. There's a lot of that kind of transparency and requirement of the consumer saying, I want to trust, but I want to verify that my food is safe, and that I know where it came from, and that food was produced in an ethical, sustainable way. And so I think that the consumer mindset and the way that they're thinking about the future is really changing in a good way.
Yeah, I would agree. I think also with sustainability also creates mergers and acquisitions. I mean, there's certain level of economics that you have to accomplish. Sometimes you have the resources, sometimes you don't. So you're going to see more M&A, I think, consolidation. It drives out efficiencies.
For sure.
You can see it sometimes. People think of it as a bad word, but in all fairness, it's probably driving to what the market demands are. We talk about it all the time, about what makes you successful. Paul and I like to think about every day you'd like to find a new niche, because if you find it today, somebody's going to find it tomorrow. So we always have a saying in our industry a lot of times, you got to find the riches in the niches.
Right.
But you got to keep driving and keep innovative thought process in order to seek to find those opportunities.
So do you think, mentioning supply chain, do you think now, today, you have a better handle on you almost have to have a better handle on every aspect of the supply chain when you mentioned farm to table and finding the niche?
Well, along that line, I think Paul would admit, from our aspect, from the minute we seed our alfalfa product and we harvest it, we know from each lot that we cut and harvest, we know where it goes within a reasonable doubt of where it's being stored, and so that when we make the process to make the shipment, the lot is followed all the way through. Retain samples. Regulatory's changed this, yes, but what it's really done, it's taught us how to be better at what we do, and it's driving about a different mindset amongst our team and across the industry.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. For our business, we have over 750 ingredients that go into our end products. And so it's an incredible amount of sourcing that's required. And there is a fair number of those ingredients that are not available from the US. So they're produced somewhere else in the world. So when you talk about transparency and sourcing, it's now a global effort. You have to go out and you have to find the suppliers, you have to build the trust and the partnership, you have to develop that transparency. And so it has become a much harder task, but I think it's also, it's interesting because now you're sourcing unique ingredients from growing regions all over the world, and that global supply chain makes it more challenging, but also makes it rewarding.
More challenging provides more opportunities.
Absolutely.
Too, right?
Absolutely.
It's funny to sit back and look today that our animal pet food industry is just like a human. I mean, humans buy food that smell good or tastes good, and that's what they want for their pet. Mm-hmm. And so when you go to Paul's it's a conversation around the 750 different ingredients. I mean, you're looking at, he's trying to identify healthy, nutritional, influence, utility of that ingredient so that it provides not only a safe, but a more beneficial, nutritious ingredient for the diet.
Great, thank you. This one has to do with, we'll kind of, piggyback off that with the changing eating habits and get into how the changing eating habits in the United States and how are changing and how that's impacting what's grown and raised. Does that change what you're growing? Does that change not only what you're doing, but what you're producing?
I think for us, no, it doesn't. I've always said, we're kind of one of these unusual businesses in that we do one thing. We seed and harvest alfalfa, and we have a very special process on how we make direct dehydrated alfalfa. One, we're going to make it fresh. Two, we're going to make it available immediately to our customers. As I always say, if our real customer could tell us something, they'd be barking, meowing, or running around a racetrack, or jumping and leaping and going over equestrian hurdles. So what we look at when we talk to consumers, they share with us, it's important to be able to be fresh. Now, let's talk about niches and let's talk about segments. I would have never thought we would have been in the egg layer industry with alfalfa product, okay? I would have never thought we'd have been in the dog and the cat companion animal industry. So what you find is nutritional beneficial utility. And the only way you accomplish that is by doing more research, changing your farm practices, to focus on how you're going to optimize not only the nutrition, but also to maximize the yield. Most of the time throughout agriculture, and Paul's 100% right, we've been doing things a long time, but we're changing, we're shifting. You know, it used to be go out and focus on yield, yield, yield. Today it's more on nutrition. It might be white corn, it may be yellow corn, it might be sorghum, you know. So I think when it starts at the farm and it gets to the industry, I think everyone's trying to look at what true value do I bring. But ultimately, it's got to be something a consumer desires. And it starts with choice of foods, from wet cake and a dog food or a cat food to a dry food. You know, everybody's got choice. And I think that's kind of where I'd say you gotta find that niche. Keep finding that niche.
You know, I think when you look at the eating habits of consumers, they're absolutely changing. One of the things that we have to worry about in ag is, are those sustainable changes or are those fads? So that's one of the things we're always trying to address. But, you know, if I look back at our business 10 years ago, we made 0 organic products. And today, organic is 15% of our business. And so that's a major change when you think about how you're growing, how you're working with the local farmers to convert ground and be sustainable in that practice. So, you know, I think about, you know, when we've got in the poultry business, you know, we produce eggs. And so we produce non-GMO, free range, cage-free, organic, you know, pasture, all sorts of different types of, and all to meet specific consumer segment needs. So I think that one of the things that we're looking at is how do we continue to focus on what the consumer is going to want? But even within that egg, just to use Ken's example, you know, we've developed and innovated healthy, all-natural herb and supplements that actually make that yolk higher in omega, make it more vibrant, make it healthier for both for the chicken and for the consumer. So we're looking at the animal health, which is very important to consumers. You look at the way people are thinking about how animals are treated, how they're raised. We're looking at that aspect. And then we also have to look at how that animal is going to be nutritious, whether it's an egg or milk or cheese or meat for the consumer. So it's taking all the way back to the supply chain and saying, how are we going to make sure that the animal is cared for properly in a sustainable way, and that the food is nutritious, and that it's what a consumer is going to want. And that consumer is now looking through that entire chain completely differently than they did 20 years ago. So it's, you know, we're building research facilities where we've got PhDs. We have 39 advanced nutritional degrees on our team. So we're investing a huge amount of resources in training, in bringing those technical people on, doing the research, and then ultimately talking to consumers. We run focus groups like you would if you were GNC selling a nutritional supplement. But we're talking to consumers, you know, in Philadelphia, in Florida, in Detroit, and saying, what are you looking for? What do you want your food to taste like? How do you want it to be raised? What's the nutritional content that's important to you? So the whole industry is having to look through this entire chain and say, what does the consumer actually want? And then what are they willing to pay for? And it's a really interesting project.
I would just add that, you know, he talks about research, and you know, when you look at it, you know, the lots of times you think about, okay, what drives it? So marketing is what drives it, but personal choice. If you're in the like parts of Canada, they do not see an egg yolk as being yellow and in green, what we call in color, yellow in color. They will see a white egg, if you will. Now, ironically, when you think about, okay, that's the yolk, but when you look at xanthophyll, which actually is a part of what was a part of the nutrient within alfalfa, processed properly, as xanthophyll converts to lutein. Lutein, of course, as a human, when we consume it, helps us mitigate our eye degradation. So it's all about marketing. So when you find something that people like, it's typically driven from some means of marketing or awareness or education.
It sounds like both of you are just really also saying focus on what you do great today, and then look forward to tomorrow and see what you can do better. And just be forward looking. You have to be forward looking. It sounds like with the changes that you're mentioning.
Innovate. You mentioned focus. I mean, I would just share, any great leader will tell you, it takes focus. It takes focus and it takes passion.
Absolutely. All right, this one's for Paul. We'll get one for you. You are in the early years of your career. What do you hope to accomplish?
That's a great
As
question.
third generation,
Yeah,
right?
that's a great question. Obviously, as third generation, you always think about legacy and protecting what you built as a family and as an organization. We've got 650 team members, and I think about every day, how am I going to be a good leader for that team? How am I going to build that team? How am I going to create opportunities for them? How am I going to make them want to come to work every day where they feel like they've got the responsibility and the empowerment and the opportunity to grow what they want to do and create for themselves. So that's one of the things I really think about a lot is how do I lead well to create opportunities for our team? And then I think a lot about growth. How are we going to innovate? How are we going to create opportunities for the consumer? We think about our delivering value. If we don't deliver value for our customers and our customer's customer, we don't deserve to exist. And so how are we going to drive more value for our customers? And then I think about sustainability, and I think about, how are we going to change the way that we use resources? How are we going to change the way that we focus on the environment, but also on efficiency? Because ultimately, we've got a big job ahead of us. The next 50 years are going to look a lot differently than the last 50 years. And so what are the consumers going to want? How are we going to use resources? How are we going to create more value for them as we see the ever-changing challenge of weather, pandemics? There's a lot to adapt to in our industry, but I think it comes back to people. I think a lot about the family that is our team and how am I going to do my job well so that they can be successful? And that'd be my biggest concern.
I would just add, Paul is very similar to my young professional son. You don't influence with authority anymore as a young professional leader. You influence with buy-in. You influence with information and empowerment. And I think that's a big shift in all industries, but specific in our ag industry. You have a large amount of retirees that are about to come on, me hopefully being one of them soon, but you've got a large group of percentage of people that are basically in their latter years of their careers. And I'm excited. I'm excited to see young people like Paul, my son Ty, but young talent coming into our industry. It's fun to watch.
Well, and you mentioned value, and both of you can jump in on this. And value is always, it's going to be different, right? You said the next 50 years and mentioning all the changes that ahead possibly, and who knows, but that value is always going to be changing too. So providing value is,
Absolutely.
7 day a week.
We have a proverb or whatever you want to call it in our organization that, you have to keep your eye on the ball of the customer. When I was a baseball player growing up, Ty was a baseball player, when you're hitting, if you don't watch the ball all the way till it connects with the bat, you're going to miss it. And we always say in business, if you don't keep your eye on the ball of the customer, you're going to miss and you're not going to create value. And we're all in competitive industries. A lot of it is commodity based that we're trying to differentiate. And so if you're not focused on how you're going to create a differentiated value proposition for your customer every minute of every day, 24 days a week, including holidays, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're going to have misses. And we have to stay focused on the change and on the customer and on our team. It's a big job.
Mm-hmm. Right. Value to people varies. It's like personalities. And so I think to hit on what Paul's saying is about how do you get people to be on the same value creation mindset, Some people intend to kind of need to learn, from academics. Some learn by on-the-job skills and being in the movement and the activity of it. But I think at the end of the day, the true value comes right here from the heart and the passion to be the best in whatever you do. And I really, really suggest this strongly to young people. It's bringing a ball of fire. It's bringing a passion and a desire to go run. That's really the key things.
Great. And again, this is for both of you. Considering all the changes and challenges discussed thus far, how do you maximize profit in agribusiness today?
Let's go virtual.
Ken said it earlier, the riches are in the niches. You have to find a differentiated product, differentiated area, a consumer need that's unmet. You know, we're always looking for that. What is the unmet need? And sometimes it can be a product. 10 years ago, it was organic. It was an unmet need that was growing. Look at the areas of the industry that are growing, but it can also be service and quality. As you look at, as companies grow and as there's different players in an industry, providing some of the best quality, providing some of the best service, doing things differently than competitors is a niche. It's a way to differentiate yourself. In agriculture, everybody can sell corn. Everybody can sell a commodity. And there's very limited differentiation, and there is no money to be made doing it unless you do it at an incredible scale. So you're going to have to figure out what is your differentiation. How do you do it cheaper? Maybe it's a differentiation in the processes that you use, in the efficiency that you have, in the team that you have built, in the quality of your product, in the service that you bring to the table, or ultimately in the product that you're delivering to the marketplace. But you have to figure out how you're going to be different and how you're going to deliver to that consumer more value than they can get someplace else. And it's not about price, it's about value. And I think that's one of the things people focus on is they say, well, I have to be lowest price. Very few people, or most people.
Yeah, I echo, it's called the most affordable. It's not always the best in price, nor is it the lowest in price. But I think when you go back to maximizing profits, it goes back to attracting that talent that can, it has a certain knowledge or skill to see when do we adapt with technology, when do we adapt with automation in order to continue to driving out efficiencies. And I think in agri-industry, we've always been mostly hands-on. And I think what we are today is we're more what I call smart on today. We're smart on everything we do. We have to try to find out what's the least amount of risk in order to avoid the challenge or the consequence of maximizing on our top line, our profitability. Regionality, we talk about Ohio, Northwest Ohio, who would have ever thought, and why does everyone think alfalfa is grown in Northwest Ohio? Go back to the glacier days, it was the black swamp. So our deep-rooted forage of queen harvest of alfalfa likes to go down and find moisture. Thus, why we're in Northwest Ohio.
Was that a shift, the shift from price to value? Was that something that you all have seen over your career? That is, fairly recent, the last couple of decades?
I don't think so.
No.
I think value creation is a part of human DNA. I think that people, assuming that there's a certain level of discretionary income. So if you look at a subsistence economy, no, price is king because it's about what's the lowest cost that I can get to feed myself. But as soon as you introduce any level of discretionary income into a society, it immediately becomes about value creation. And so, I'll use an example. A lot of us probably have used Fairlife milk or aware of it. Who would have thought 10 years ago that somebody would pay 3 times the amount or 4 times the amount for milk? But it's about the value creation of what they've put into that product. We've got the same thing in some of our products, and we feed Kentucky Derby horses, and it's about the premiumness of the product, it's about the nutritional values, about even though it might be a little bit more expensive, if it creates more value and those horses run faster, it makes a difference. So I don't think that's new to human behavior. I think it's been a part of how we make decisions for all of human history.
I think one of the biggest changes we've seen, though, in that value is the media and the means and the ways you get the marketing or the education or the information out there.
For sure.
All of our social media today is another big means or driver behind how you inform consumers. And so when consumers see, listen, and start to self-determine what they want, then you see buying choice. So constant awareness and understanding to it. But I think the biggest thing I would keep coming back to is you've got to be transparent and you've got to be able to prove or traceability and be consistent in what you do from farm to table, whatever it entails in the agri industry.
And that's a great point, Ken. Marketing has changed how consumers perceive value. So I don't know if the value proposition has changed as much, but the way we deliver that content to consumers and the way that they perceive the value has absolutely changed, and the messaging has changed.
The packaging's changed.
Packaging has changed.
Well, and you touched on it too with consistency. You said that that was going to be what I was going to ask you next. I mean, it sounds like you're both really talking about not only transparency and value, but being consistent in delivering that too.
Well,
Plays a big role.
Well, I think you got to focus on consistency because, a brand is a brand. And when you jeopardize a brand, it's because you've lost sight of or value the consistency or the supply chain channels, if you will. So, as I talked earlier about regulatory, I mean, we do it ourselves. We naturally do it because we want to be the best. But regulatory is driving out change. It's driving about, different things. So we talk about what people want, or organic, for example. Some of you are organic lines from tremendously. But it brings about certification requirements from non-GMO to certification in organic. And all that brings about the consistency requirements, which is now validated at the various highest level, whether it be by regulatory or it be directly by your consumer. They want to know what you do.
Yeah, I would say the consumer issue has changed a lot. And so when you talk about consistency and quality, if I go back 10 years, if we produced a product and we had a problem with that product, we got a call. So let's say we produced a bag of horse feed. We feed a lot of horses. And we shipped that to Illinois. And that consumer had a problem with that bag. He'd probably get on the internet, or he'd look at the back of the bag. He'd call our number. He would talk to somebody in our office, and he would say, hey, I need something to be fixed here. And it really didn't have that much brand impact. We were able to fix it, move on. Today, that consumer in 48 states where we ship that product, as soon as we have a problem, that consumer can get on social media and tell the entire world that you had a brand problem. I mean, that level of immediate, whether it's in politics or marketing or whatever it is, the immediate access to tell your message to the entire world is both good and it's terrifying. Because, if I talk to our marketing team, one of the things that keeps us up at night is if we don't sell a great product consistently every time, what is going to show up on social media tomorrow? Now, the flip side is we get to communicate directly with the consumer in a device that they hold in their hand 25% of every day that they're awake. And we can communicate directly to them the differentiation in our product. So it's got incredible abilities for good and for marketing and for communication and for understanding their preferences and for listening to what they're telling you. But it also has the opportunity that if you're a business that doesn't protect that brand and doesn't care a lot and respond transparently, when you have a problem, you now have to tell the world, I had a problem and this is how I fix it. So that level of transparency, communicating to the consumer, is mission critical to any brand.
But I think that's what I made our supply chain what it is today. I think consumers know we're safe. And it's because we're constantly reiterating we're open-minded and we're transparent about what we say and how we go about making modifications or corrections.
Well, knowing you're safe, we'll walk us into this next one. What do ag businesses do to ensure food safety? So around that realm of safety,
Well, I remember when I first got in this industry, our procedure manual was maybe a half of just very, very thin. Today it's volumes, but volumes don't speak words. They've got to be embraced. You can't just talk the talk. You got to embrace it. You got to learn to walk the walk, if you will. So it starts with education, starts with protocol, starts about having a best way practice about you. In our team every day, we're looking for the safest way and the best way. But when you talk about safety in the food chain supply today, Paul, I can't even imagine the numbers and audits you guys have, but I can assure you, you get audited because people want the reassurance. They know what you're doing is safe and it's right. People still believe when you sell a complete feed of nutritional products, they want to know not what's just on the outside of that bag of a brand. They want to know what's on the inside. And so I applaud organizations like the Comback team for doing their due diligence to come in and find out what we as a supplier, how we do it, what we do, and how do we reassure that safe supply chains there.
I think it's important. I've traveled around the world with agriculture, and we in the U.S. have the safest food supply chain in the world. If you look at the level investigation and the level of transparency and the level of food safety. It's so important. And I don't have any concerns knowing what I know about the safety of our food. And it goes back to what we as an organization do. I mean, we are feeding chickens that are producing eggs that supply the flu vaccine. I mean, we have to produce an incredibly sophisticated product in order to make sure that those chickens don't have any diseases whatsoever, so that when that egg is used to produce vaccine, it doesn't have any impact on the human being that is being injected into. You think about that level of sophistication and what's required of that. We have 52 audits every single year by FDA, USDA, the organic administrations, by customers, by vaccine companies, by genetics companies, by Chipotle. You think about the level of sophistication that we have to have in order to manage that variety of audits. But we always say we love audits, because what that does is it forces our team to think differently about how we produce products. We have learned so much from the audits, from the customer ideas that they bring us, from the regulatory ideas that we're brought. We know there's ways that we can improve. So we view audits as, hey, this is a great way for us to learn something today. And at the end of the day, it goes back to the value proposition. We have to be able to guarantee that to our consumer that what we produce is safe. We're producing bacon and eggs and feed and we did a study of consumers on the poultry side. And what we learned is consumers were as concerned about the health of their chickens in their backyard as they were about the eggs that their children were going to consume. That's an amazing shift, I think, in the way people think about the food chain. And so we're focused a lot on how we're going to create safety for the animal and for the human being that's interacting with that.
Great, thank you. And with the few minutes we have left, I do want to try to get two more back in here. So one, I definitely want to ask a question on leadership. From a corporate perspective, what does it take to be a leader in the global agricultural field today? I think you did touch on a little bit of this, with transparency, consistency, but is there anything else from a leadership perspective, either a corporate global mindset or even within your own organization?
You got to have extreme focus, and you got to have a lot of influence on finding and getting people to buy in to the right ways. Culture is everything. Culture is everything.
Yeah, I start with integrity. I think any leader today needs to have integrity, and that's treating people the way you want to be treated. It's we have a rule: we don't want to sign any agreements we wouldn't sign both sides of. That's just about being a good leader, doing what's right. I think that as we look at the future, that's going to be really important for leadership, and then the transparency and honesty that comes into integrity. I think focusing on people and focusing on doing the right thing.
Well said.
Great, thank you. We've got one more.
Yeah.
And this is again for both of you, some final thoughts. What piece of career advice would you give our college students that are here watching today's program?
I can sum it up. Bring a lot of energy. I think you got to bring a lot of passion. You got to have that desire to go out and learn. I always coin the phrase, knowledge. You got to get to know what you need to know. That's the KNOW. And if you get the KNOW, you get the EDG on the end. And the only way you get that knowledge is by putting that L right in the middle. And you get that by listening, learning, and applying that knowledge to the opportunity you have ahead of you. Bring a lot of energy, young people. But there's lots of opportunity in our industry.
There's so much opportunity.
And we welcome them.
Well, to talk about opportunity, what should, along the lines of the same question, career advice, what should students be focusing on?
So I give everyone that I come in contact with three pieces of advice. First thing is, go work for a good leader. Your leader is going to make the biggest difference in the first 5 years of your career. Go find somebody that's actually going to teach you, that is going to give you opportunities, that is going to take an interest in what you're doing. Go work for a good leader. And don't just take the first job that comes your way. Second thing I say is, go work for an organization that is growing and innovating. There's very few opportunities being created in a company that isn't growing, that isn't striving to be better, that isn't trying to create value. You're gonna be stuck in a job. Go find a company to work for that's gonna grow, that's gonna innovate, where you're gonna have the opportunity to learn. And then what I tell them is, go develop a skill. Being a generic, I can do a couple of things okay, doesn't create any value for the organization you're gonna work for. Figure out what you can be exceptional at and go focus on building that skill. Because if you have a true skill for a business, you're going to be valuable. You're always going to have a job. You're always going to be in demand. And so whether that's you want to be on the nutrition side, or whether you want to be a veterinarian, or whether you want to be in management, whatever it is, whether you want to be a business analyst or in technology, whatever you think it is, go find what you want your skill to be and hone that skill, because that's how you're going to create value both for yourself and for the organization that you work for.
And it takes discipline. It takes discipline to hone in your skills.
Cool. Thank you both. And, gentlemen, we definitely want to thank you both for being here. And it was really informative. Thank you for your time. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Dr. Lack.
Thank you so much. Yes, indeed. This was just a fantastic program. And I must say that next May, when I watch the Kentucky Derby, I'm going to know that those Derby horses have been busy eating their Kalmbach feed. Is it Tribune? Their Tribune feed, and that's helping propel them so fast. And likewise, when I get my flu shot Monday, it may be a Kalmbach egg. So this was absolutely wonderful. And Ken, I'm going to ask you to write down about the KNOW, to know what you don't know, to get you to the edge, and the L for the listening. That's just wonderful advice. I want to once again thank Premier Bank for being the sponsor of our Fridays at Findlay program. We so appreciate your support. It's just wonderful. Please know this program was recorded. We recognize there was apparently an issue with one of the microphones in the first few minutes, and hopefully that was resolved and you were able to hear the rest. So we will have this it is recorded, and you are welcome to tune in to it again for picking up pieces the second go around, or to share with folks that perhaps couldn't be on live with us this morning. If you do have any comments about this program or future programs, please contact the Advancement Office here at University of Findlay. You can ask for Aaron Thompson or ask for me. And I want to remind you, December 4th, please tune in. We will have Kirk Vashaw, the president and CEO of the Spangler Candy Company, the world's largest maker of candy canes, the Dum Dum Suckers, and circus peanuts, in addition to some other things too. So thank you so much for joining us virtually, and we hope some of you, or many of you, will be able to join us on November 11th at 4 p.m. as we have a live-streamed Veterans Day program right here from our College of Business and Center for Student Life building in front of the Veterans Wall. So thanks. Have a wonderful day.